Hello everyone, it's Charles Martel again with a new video. In the video of this week, we're going to speak about perhaps another very unknown yet growing movement within Islam, which is the Quranist movement or Quranism. Now, it's weird to speak of Quranism given the fact that in Islam, the Quran is supposed to be and it is considered the word of God. So technically, every Muslim should be a Quranist. However, this is not the case. It has something to do with a little thing in Islamic thought that we have spoken of in several other videos, um, which is called the Hadith. Now, I will be probably raising some of this later, but if I don't need to, then don't, then I won't. But going back to the Hadith, basically, what is a Hadith? A Hadith is a narration, a saying, or a deed attributed to the Prophet Muhammad himself, the founder of the religion. Basically, it is considered to be the second holiest thing after the Quran. However, in practice, Hadith makes up almost 90% of the corpus, of the legal corpus that makes up Islamic law or Sharia, as well as of its traditional Islamic belief. So basically, when you hear things, for example, I don't know, that as controversial as Muhammad married his 9-year-old, to things as, for example, to pray you have to do this and then this, yeah, or things, for example, when Ramadan begins, or for example, when you hear that music is haram or prohibited in Islam, all that comes, or even things like Adam and Eve were created in this way, all of this comes from the Hadith. Now, I won't go into details here about the Hadith corpus because that requires a video in itself. However, basically, the main tenet of Quranism is the rejection of this Hadith. Basically, they believe that only the Quran should be the basis of Islam. Now, this is the entire basis for the Quranist movement. Now, this actually has justification in the text itself. Actually, the Quran says the following. This is actually found in verse 185 of the surah or chapter 7, where it actually says, in which hadith or narration after it, referring to the Quran, do they believe? So basically, it's actually tackling the word hadith directly, because the Quran is also supposed to be a narration. So of course, the most literalist, or pretty much every Quranist, will tell you the Quran itself is basically destroying the whole hadith literature in itself with this verse, which is, again I repeat, chapter 7 or surah 7, verse 185. There is also, which says in the surah 7, in verses 2 and 3, it says, a book has been brought down to you, so let there be no constraint in your chest because of it, and so that you may warn it, and so may you warn with it. It's a reminder for the believers. Follow what has been brought down to you from your Lord, and do not follow any allies besides Him. Rarely do you remember. Now, there are many other verses in the Quran which, according to the Quranists, confirm their position. Now, I will leave in the description below links to these websites, and for you guys if you want to go more in depth in this particular Quranic argument. But basically, the whole idea is that the Quran itself is supposed to be enough for the foundation and basis of the Islamic religion. Now, how does this play out in real life? Well, this is actually the question that has long since divided the Quranist movement. Now, calling Quranism a sect, as some people have tried to do, is misleading, because Quranism is more of an idea or a movement, if you want, than an organized group. Basically, it has a variety of different thinkers and a variety of different people who have actually argued in favor of the respective interpretations of the religion. Now, there are some Quranists who do accept some hadith in manner that they are stories. For example, that they use these stories to somehow infer verses according to their context. This is actually a minority position. The majority position within the Quranist group is that basically they infer the meaning of the words that supposedly need context with the meaning of the Quran itself. So basically, I will give you an example of this. I will have to erase some of this. I'll write them later, don't worry. Just a guidance. So basically, for example, the Quran says the word, this is in verse, give me a second, and I tell you the exact verse. Now this is a very famous one and perhaps one of the best examples of how wide different can this be. Now it's actually in verse 4, sorry, in Surah 4 or chapter 4 verse 34, which says, men are protectors and maintainers of women because God has given them one more than the other, and because they support them from their means. Therefore the righteous women are devoutly obedient and guard in their husband's absence what God has made them guard. And to those women whose part from whose part you fear disloyalty or ill conduct, admonish them, then refuse them to share their best, and at last beat them. But if they return to obedience, seek not against them any evil means, for God is most high and great above you all. Now this is the common wife beating verse. Actually, the word in Arabic is the word daraba. So let's written like this in the normal alphabet, in the Latin alphabet. And actually daraba actually means to strike or to beat. However, it has been used in the Quran in different contexts. For example, to daraba example, or to strike the earth, for example, these kind of things. So basically, in this case, the literal meaning of the words means to strike. Now, a lot of the Quranists doing, we could consider interpretation juggling, have actually said no. This verse is not referring to wife beating, but for example, to admonish them or to strike them in words. This is what it means. Now, of course, it doesn't make the verse a little less problematic. However, basically what they are trying to say is that due to the multiplicity of meanings from the word daraba, then technically the reader can infer basically that it is not only wife beating, but it has an array of multiple meanings. Now, which one you choose is basically your own choice. Although each of the commentators, the Quranist commentators, actually argue in different positions for or against a particular interpretation. Now, of course, we also find some very conservative Quranists. I don't know his name, but he actually has a channel called Quranite.com. It's actually very conservative. I'll leave the link in the description below. He's actually quite popular. His YouTube channel actually, the company has Quranite.com. He's among the most conservative, and he does advocate for wife beating, for example, in his translation of the Quran. But there are others. Most actually of the Quranists tend to follow the liberal interpretation of Islam, which actually denies wife beating. Now, with this, there are a multiple of examples. For example, when you say you're going to chop off the hands of thieves, they interpret it as something more allegorical, as chopping them off the means of survival of the thief. So basically, there is like different interpretations for each particular verse. Now, of course, most of them don't really delve into theological aspects, not as far as I've seen. They mostly tend to deal with interpretation of most. Now, this interpretation juggling usually tends to go along the lines of the most contentious or controversial verses in the Quran, which often relate to violence, to the status of women, to this kind of things. However, there are actually some who have taken this to the next level of of hypertextualizing the Quran without interpreting. They call it the literal, or the well, there is no word in English for this, but sort of a literary analysis of the Quran based on the language itself. Now, one exponent is Moreno Al-Ajami. The guy actually writes in French. I've read some of his articles; they are really interesting, but unless you are very well versed in the Arabic language, very difficult to follow. Basically, the guy actually deconstructs the entire text, only basing it upon the Arabic root words. Now, for those of you with some knowledge of Arabic, you should know that Arabic is not constructed like the Indo-European languages, which is constructed like uh, it actually does, but not anymore, in which you have the root word, which means something, and from that root word you derive different meanings. The Arab language and most Semitic languages do keep these root word forms, and it is from this, for example, daraba, which is a root, which means to strike. You can actually derive a whole variety of meanings. So the whole point of this is that basically each group has like their own unique interpretation of Quranism. So you can find from jihadist Quranists, which actually do exist. I'll talk about them in a little while, to ultra-liberal Quranists who, for example, don't believe in prayer, who don't believe in fasting, deny the 5 pillars of Islam, and I mean you can find a whole different array of interpretations, but all with the main tenet that they are in the Quran and that they do not need extra Quranic sources for interpretation. Now, perhaps one of the most famous Quranists of the entire world, because there have actually been leaders in this movement which have created movements in their own right. Perhaps one of the most well known is Rashad Khalifa. Now, this guy was actually an Egyptian biochemist who did a mathematical study of the Quran, and he actually found a code relating to the number 19, which basically the entire Quran could be broken up in 19 and its multiples. Now, I'm not a mathematician, I won't dare to explain it myself. If you want to know more, I'll link some videos and some information regarding the 19 code, which has actually been believed by non-Quranist Muslims as something real. Well, he was the first one to propose the Quran code. Basically, what this means is that due to the perfect symmetry within the text, the idea is that this text is a divine text, a revealed text. Basically, the idea is that this code actually proves that there is a creator that made this thing possible and that actually revealed this text. So basically, the whole point of this mathematical approach is that the Quran is perfect, and because of that, it needs to be a revealed text. And now, Rashad Khalifa, he actually spawned a movement called the UC, or United Submitters International, which I don't know if it's still active. They used to have a mosque in Tucson in Arizona. And basically, they believe that Rashad Khalifa was a prophet. They, in this case, were based in verse 3 of Surah chapter 36, of Surah Yasin. Now, a little bit of context from verses 1 up 2, it basically says following: Yasin, by the glorious, by the wise Quran, barely you were a prophet. Now, the interpretation of the word Yasin, which are 2 letters from the Arabic alphabet, has been debated for hundreds of years in Islam. Now, most people actually use Yasin as a name, and according to Rashad Khalifa, yes, he is Yasin. Basically, the Quran is saying that he is the prophet Yasin, or at least this is what the USI claim. Now, he was actually assassinated by Al-Qaeda operatives because he was considered a heretic, because according to most Muslims, even most Quranists, reject the idea of another prophet after Muhammad. Now, one of his most famous students, who also continued with this whole 19 project, is Edip Yüskel, sorry. He is a Turkish-American scientist and philosophy teacher. He was part of the USI. However, he split with them when basically they start giving prophethood status to Rashad Khalifa. His belief really followed the same line as Rashad Khalifa. He even made a translation of the Quran in English with two other people, which is called Quran a Progressive Translation, in which he basically does what I did with the word Daraba, in which he basically approaches the most controversial passages in the Quran and gives them a progressive spin based upon his reading of the Quran and his hermeneutics. Now there are many others. I actually wrote several here. I actually erased two of them, which I'll read right here. Now I already talked about Moreno al-Ajami, so we can erase him. Now Rashad Khalifa and Edip Yüskel. Now link they have Yüskel has a YouTube channel, so I'll leave it in the description below. He posts videos in both Turkish and English. You have other people, for example, you have perhaps some of the other most famous is Ahmed Subhy Mansour. He also has a YouTube channel. In this case, he is from Egypt. He actually had to flee Egypt. He was from Al-Azhar University. He was one of the first Quranists in Al-Azhar. Because of that, he was granted a heretic, and he actually had to ask for political asylum in the United States. Well, he's also among the most progressive voices within the movement. He has a YouTube channel which posts video in Arabic and but have English subtitles. He also has some conferences in English. Basically, his position is really liberal, although he does believe up to a certain point in something called the Sunnah of Ibrahim. For example, he believes in normal Muslim prayers, in normal Muslim rituals, and he believes that these are God's Sunnah, or the tradition of God, which has been passed down from Ibrahim all the way down. So he is not completely Quranist, but he rejects 99.99% of Hadith. Now, there is also another one who is really famous and who is also alive today. You can find his talks, and I have the honor of meeting him in person. His name is Farouk A. This guy is Malay. He actually lives I think in the UK. He has several readings of the Quran. We actually had a very good discussion with him. I had the opportunity to meet him via Skype. Basically, his interpretation of the Quran, I compared it to a Jehovah's Witness Bible study circle, because basically he goes all the back to the text to explain things, and he makes interrelations between different passages of the Quran to explain one another. Now, his position is also really liberal in terms of approach to the Quran. For example, he's pro-LGBT, he is in favor of a lot of women's rights, in favor of women imams. So basically that's him. He has some videos. He doesn't have a YouTube channel per se, but I'll link some of his videos in the description. There is also the guy from Quranist.com. He actually has a YouTube channel which is Quranist.com. You can look up this in YouTube. He has basically a very traditional, like, conservative interpretation of the Quran. He also has a translation of the Quran based upon what he calls textual hermeneutics, which is what we talked about with Moreno al-Ajami, although with a different view. Now, the thing with these interpretations is that they all try to be quote-unquote accurate and objective. However, there is always subjectivity when doing these interpretations, so we should always consider these interpretations not as the true interpretations, but rather as someone's interpretations. You are free to follow or not. Now, there are other people, for example, Qasim Ahmed, who passed away I think 2 or 3 years ago. He was also from Malaysia. He was actually jailed for his beliefs. I think he inspired Farouk Peru. In India, there was a guy called Chekanur Maulavi. He was actually from the Indian state of Kerala. He was assassinated, or he disappeared in 1999. There is still a Quranist movement in Kerala, which actually made the headlines because a woman led the prayer in that mosque, and it was founded by this guy. There is also Mohammed Talbi. He was a historian and a Quran translator from Tunisia. He was actually very famous in France and in the French-speaking world for his also progressive positions aligned with the Quran and his criticism of Hadith. Now talking about groups, organized groups, you have Izgi Amal, which I just recently learned of. It's actually based in Kazakhstan. I think it's from the whole 19 movement. I don't really know exactly how they are. Now you have the Ahle Quran. They actually are from the Indian subcontinent. They date back all the way to the 19th century. They are a reaction to another group called Ahle Hadith, or the people of the Hadith, which are basically India's version of Wahhabism and Salafism. And they basically reject the Hadith on the grounds that, again, they are not authoritative. Now I don't know a whole lot about their interpretation, but my guess is that they are also progressive. Now you have Tul-e-Islam, the Party of Islam, which claims to be a non-denominational Quranic-based religious political movement in Pakistan. Well, in Pakistan is actually really huge. But basically, I mean, yeah, they claim that they are non-sectarian, non-denominational, and they seek to return to the principles of the Quran. And finally, you have the Kalokato. The word Kalokato is a Hausa, which is an African language. It's a word from the Hausa language, which means a mere man said, referring to. Now, this mere man refers to the Prophet Muhammad, and basically the whole thing of the movement is that Muhammad was just a man, and that the true thing that you should be paying attention to is to the Quran. Now, they are actually reported to have a militia in northern Nigeria, where they're actually based, and they actually said that they are based on Senegal. Now, I don't know a whole lot about this group. There is a YouTube channel called Quranic Islam, which I guess is from the Kalokato because they showcase some of their mujahideen. Although their beliefs are a blend of traditional jihadi Islam with a Quranist interpretation, although much is unknown about this movement. Now, one last thing before I end this video is that to some Quranists, like for example Dr. Peru or Ahmed Subhy Mansour, among others, they don't take such a literal interpretation of the Quran. Instead, they use an approach which they call in the spirit of the Quran. So basically, it refers not to what the text says, but rather what it means to say. So basically, to them, the Quran has universal principles like justice, freedom, equality, which in their view should guide the interpretation of the Quran. Now, this is actually perhaps another central tenet for most of the thinkers now. Guys like, for example, Quranite.com, whose name I am sorry I forgot, don't follow. They follow a more literalist approach, like Moreno al-Ajami. Now, this doesn't mean that interpretations are right or wrong. Most of these people tend to be active, however, mostly online. Now, this is why you would be asking, well, why is Quranism not a sect? It's not a sect because outside some movements like Kalokato or the USI, rarely there have been organized attempts to bring together this community. Now, these people meet in forums. They are mostly active in the internet or in small circles, especially among progressive Muslim circles. But as a cohesive movement, Quranism doesn't exist, and there are not even actually census data on how many Quranists there are around the world. Now, according to some estimations, the movement is growing fast, thanks especially to its popularity in the internet. There have been reports of arrests against Quranists in Egypt, Algeria, and Sudan. The movement is also said to be the inspiration behind a lot of progressive Muslim groups, which I will cover in a separate video. But in general, you can't say Quranism is a thing more than an idea. Well, I hope you enjoyed this video and I hope you please subscribe and leave your comments below. I'll watch you next time. Take care.